The scent of pine and frost clung to the air as I made my way through the gathering. Bodies pressed against each other, warm breath creating clouds in the cold night. But somehow I remained untouched, a ghost drifting through a sea of strangers who smelled of belonging. My hands trembled slightly as I tugged my worn sweater closer, a pathetic shield against not just the biting December chill, but the weight of 100 curious eyes. The choosing ceremony begins at midnight, someone whispered nearby, and I felt my stomach twist into knots that threatened to choke me. The pack's annual winter solstice ritual was supposed to be a celebration, a night when eligible wolves found their matches, when destinies aligned under the watchful gaze of the moon. For everyone else, perhaps. For me, it was another reminder of what I lacked, what I'd always lacked. Strength, power, presence. The qualities that made someone desirable in our world. My grandmother's silver pendant hung heavy against my chest, hidden beneath layers of fabric. "Remember, Eliza," she'd whispered before she died, pressing the crescent moon into my palm. "True strength isn't always what it seems." I touched it now through my clothes, a ritual of my own. The only inheritance that mattered from the only person who'd ever truly seen me. Across the clearing, through the crowd of mingling pack members, I caught sight of him. Dominic Blackcrest, our alpha, standing with his inner circle. Even from this distance, his presence seemed to bend the very air around him. Tall and imposing, with shoulders that could carry the weight of our entire territory, and eyes that missed nothing. My heart stuttered against my ribs, a reaction I'd learned to hate but couldn't control. He turned suddenly, as if sensing my gaze, and our eyes locked across the expanse. Time slowed, stretched like taffy being pulled until it threatened to snap. His eyes narrowed, head tilting slightly as if trying to solve a puzzle. Then, inexplicably, he began moving toward me. I should have run. Any sane Omega would have. Instead, I remained frozen, watching his approach like prey hypnotized by the predator that would end them. "You're Eliza Winters," he said when he reached me, his voice deeper than I'd imagined during the countless times I'd observed him from afar. It wasn't a question. "Yes, Alpha," I managed, my voice embarrassingly small. My pale blonde hair slipped forward, curtaining my face in what was both a gesture of respect and an instinctive need to hide. "You haven't participated in the choosing before." Again, not a question, but I answered anyway. "No, sir." "Why?" One word, delivered with such quiet intensity that I felt it reverberate through my bones. Around us, the crowd had created a small, wary circle of space, pretending not to watch while doing nothing but. The weight of their attention pressed against me like physical hands. "I didn't see the point," I admitted, surprised by my own honesty. No one would choose me. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. There and gone so quickly, I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. "Almost." "Perhaps," he said, the word drawn out like he was tasting it. "You've been waiting for the right person to choose." Before I could process what he meant, a commotion erupted at the edge of the gathering. A young wolf, barely more than a teenager, burst through the trees, panic etched across his face. "Alpha!" he gasped, dropping to one knee before Dominic. "Hunters at the northern border. They've got weapons we've never seen before." The atmosphere shifted instantly from celebration to crisis. Dominic turned away, barking orders, assembling his fighters. In moments, the clearing had emptied of all but the very young, the elderly, and those like me, the dispensable ones. I should have felt relief at his departure. Instead, my fingers kept touching the spot on my wrist where, for the briefest moment, his hand had rested. My skin still burned from the contact. Dawn broke cold and gray. I moved through the silent cabin, gathering herbs and bandages. News had trickled in throughout the night. The hunters had been driven back, but not without cost. Wounded wolves would soon return, needing care. As the pack's apprentice healer, I would finally be useful. This, at least, I could do well, even if my Omega status made me an afterthought in most pack matters. My hands might tremble in social situations, but they were steady when cleaning wounds, setting bones, brewing remedies. The door flew open, letting in a gust of frigid air along with two betas carrying a third between them. Blood darkened the snow at their feet. "Where's Diana?" one demanded, referring to our head healer. "Northern Outpost," I answered, already clearing space on the examination table. "There are more wounded there. I'm what you've got." They exchanged a look that said everything about their confidence in me. "Put him down," I ordered, surprising them with my tone. This was my domain, the one place where I didn't feel like an imposter. "Now." They complied, laying their comrade on the table. I cut away his shirt, revealing 3 deep gashes across his torso. "Silver-tipped," I murmured, noting the angry red inflammation surrounding each wound. "These won't heal naturally." I worked quickly, cleaning the wounds with a tincture of wolfsbane and moonflower, neutralizing the silver's effects before stitching the deepest parts. My world narrowed to the rhythm of needle and thread, the careful application of poultices, the wrapping of clean bandages. I was so focused that I didn't notice we had another visitor until a shadow fell across my work. "Will he live?" Dominic's voice made me start, but my hands remained steady on my patient. "Yes," I answered without looking up. "But he'll be weak for several days. The hunters are using a new type of silver compound. It resists our natural healing." A low growl rumbled from the alpha's chest. "You can tell that just by looking at the wounds?" I nodded, finally glancing up. Dominic looked exhausted, a cut above his eyebrow still oozing slowly, his clothes torn and dirty, but his eyes remained sharp, assessing. My grandmother taught me to recognize poison signatures. This one's different, more sophisticated. These aren't ordinary hunters. Interest flickered across his face. "Your grandmother was Diana's predecessor." "Yes." "She taught you well." The unexpected praise warmed something inside me that had been cold for too long. I pushed the feeling away, gesturing to the stool beside me. "You're injured too." "It's nothing." "With respect, Alpha, I can smell the silver in your blood." "Sit." For a moment, I thought he might refuse, might remind me of my place, of the impropriety of an Omega giving orders to an Alpha. Instead, to my astonishment, he sat. I cleaned the wound on his forehead with trembling fingers, acutely aware of his eyes tracking my every movement. His skin was unnaturally warm beneath my touch, even for a werewolf. "You didn't run last night," he said suddenly, "when the attack came. Everyone saw you helping organize the evacuation of the young ones." I focused on applying salve to his wound, avoiding his gaze. Someone needed to. It was brave. It was necessary. I stepped back, wiping my hands on a clean cloth. "The cut isn't deep, but watch for fever. This silver compound seems to linger in the bloodstream." He caught my wrist as I turned away, his touch sending electricity skittering beneath my skin. "Tonight," he said, his voice dropping to a register that seemed to bypass my ears and speak directly to something primitive within me. "The choosing ceremony will continue. Our traditions won't be interrupted by human threats." "I don't see what that has to do with me," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. His grip tightened slightly, his thumb finding my pulse point. "Don't you?" Before I could respond, the door opened again, admitting a tall, striking woman with eyes like shards of ice. Sophia, the Alpha's sister and closest advisor. Her gaze took in the scene, her brother holding my wrist, our proximity, and her lips thinned to a disapproving line. "The council is waiting," she said, each word precisely chosen. Dominic released me, the absence of his touch leaving my skin cold. He stood, once again the untouchable Alpha. "Tonight, Eliza Winters," he said, voice formal, but eyes still burning with something I couldn't, or wouldn't, name. "Be there." I watched him leave with his sister, her whispered admonishments floating back to me. Completely inappropriate, an Omega. What would Father say? Alone with my wounded patient, I pressed my hands against the rough wood of the examination table, willing my heart to slow its frantic pace. What had just happened? Why would the Alpha of our pack, the most powerful wolf for hundreds of miles, take any notice of me? My grandmother's pendant seemed to grow warmer against my skin, her words echoing in my memory. There are secrets in our bloodline, Eliza. Things I cannot tell you yet, that you must discover when the time is right. Was that time approaching? Or was I reading too much into a momentary interest that would fade with the day's light? Either way, I realized with a mixture of dread and something that felt dangerously like hope, I would be attending the choosing ceremony tonight. Snow began falling again as dusk approached, large flakes drifting lazily from a sky the color of bruised plums. I stood before my small mirror, hardly recognizing the woman who stared back. Diana had appeared at my door hours earlier, arms laden with fabric the color of midnight. "Don't argue," she'd said before I could speak. "I've watched you hide in plain sight for years. Tonight, you will be seen." The dress she'd brought hugged curves I usually concealed beneath shapeless clothing, the neckline dipping just low enough to reveal the silver pendant that now gleamed against my skin. My pale blonde hair fell in waves past my shoulders, freed from its usual practical braid. I looked different. Not beautiful, perhaps, but no longer invisible. The walk to the ceremonial clearing was a blur of anxiety and second thoughts. What was I doing? What did I hope would happen? The most likely outcome was still the same as it had always been. I would stand among the other unmated wolves, and no one would step forward to claim me. The clearing had been transformed since the previous night. Lanterns hung from tree branches, casting golden light across the freshly fallen snow. A massive bonfire burned at the center, ringed by stone benches where the council elders sat in their ceremonial robes. I slipped through the crowd, keeping to the edges as was my habit. But somehow, eyes followed me anyway. Whispers trailed in my wake. "Is that Eliza Winters, the healer's apprentice? Did you hear the Alpha asked for her specifically?" That last whisper made me stumble. How had such rumors started already? And why would anyone believe them? The ceremony began with a haunting melody played on bone flutes, the traditional call to the moon. As the last notes faded into the night air, Dominic stepped into the circle of firelight. He'd exchanged his usual utilitarian clothes for the ceremonial garb of our ancestors. Dark leather pants, a vest that left his muscled arms bare despite the cold, intricate tattoos visible across his skin, telling the story of our pack's history. A silver circlet rested on his dark hair, marking him as our leader, our protector. His eyes scanned the gathered pack members, and I found myself holding my breath, caught between hoping he would see me and praying he wouldn't. "For generations," he began, his voice carrying effortlessly across the clearing, "our pack has gathered on the winter solstice to celebrate the forming of new bonds. Tonight that tradition continues, even in the face of threats to our territory." Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. "But tonight," he continued, "there will be one change to our custom." Silence fell, heavy with anticipation. "Traditionally, unmated wolves present themselves, and any interested parties may approach to offer courtship. Tonight, I claim the Alpha's ancient right to choose first." Gasps and whispers erupted around me. This hadn't happened in living memory. The Alpha always abstained from the choosing, remaining above such proceedings until political necessity demanded a match. "Eliza Winters," Dominic called, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "Step forward." The silence that followed my name was absolute, as if the entire pack had collectively held their breath. For one terrible moment, I thought I might have imagined it, that desperate loneliness had finally driven me to hallucination. But then the crowd parted, creating a path between me and the Alpha, and I knew this was horrifyingly real. My legs moved of their own accord, carrying me forward while my mind raced with questions I had no answers for. The heat of the bonfire warmed my face as I approached, but did nothing to thaw the ice spreading through my veins. I kept my eyes fixed on the snow at Dominic's feet, unable to meet his gaze or face the hundreds of shocked expressions surrounding us. When I reached him, he lifted my chin with one finger, forcing me to look up. His eyes reflected the dancing flames, dark and unreadable. "Eliza Winters," he said again, his voice pitched for all to hear. "I invoke the right of first claim." Murmurs erupted around us. From the corner of my eye, I saw Sophia rise from her seat among the council, her face a mask of barely contained fury. "Alpha," she hissed, stepping forward. "A word, please." Dominic didn't even glance her way. "The decision is made, sister. She's an Omega. Sophia said, no longer bothering to lower her voice. The weakest of our kind, our bloodline, is mine to continue as I see fit, he interrupted, his tone deceptively soft, but laced with steel. A shiver ran down my spine. This couldn't be happening. Alphas mated with other alphas, or occasionally with strong betas. Never with omegas. We were the caretakers, the healers, the nurturers, valued for our empathy and compassion, but never considered worthy of leadership roles, and certainly never considered as mates for someone like Dominic Blackcrest. Do you accept my claim, Eliza? He asked, bringing my spiraling thoughts to an abrupt halt. I became acutely aware of how small I felt before him, how every eye in the clearing was fixed upon us, how my answer would change everything. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. A whisper meant for him alone. Something softened in his expression. There and gone so quickly I might have imagined it. Because strength comes in many forms, he said quietly. Then, louder, do you accept? My grandmother's pendant seemed to burn against my skin, her voice whispering in my memory. When the moment comes, trust your instincts, not your fears. I accept, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. Dominic's hand moved from my chin to cup my cheek, his touch gentler than I would have thought possible from someone so powerful. Then, following tradition, he leaned down and pressed his lips to my forehead, marking me as his chosen. The gesture should have been merely symbolic. Instead, it sent a current of electricity racing from the point of contact down to my toes, leaving me lightheaded and struggling to remain standing. From his sharp intake of breath, I knew he'd felt it too. Before I could process what had happened, Dominic took my hand and turned to face the pack. The choosing will continue, he announced. But first, we celebrate. As if on cue, drums began to beat, their rhythm matching my thundering heart. The crowd's shock slowly gave way to the pull of tradition, wolves pairing off to dance around the fire, though many still cast curious glances our way. They'll adjust, Dominic said, leading me toward the edge of the clearing, away from the most prying eyes. Will they? I asked, finding my voice at last. Your sister certainly won't. His mouth quirked into something almost resembling a smile. Sophia has never approved of anything I've done. Why start now? We reached a stone bench, partially concealed by the shadows of towering pines. He gestured for me to sit, then joined me, still holding my hand as if it were the most natural thing in the world. You still haven't told me why, I said. The real reason. Dominic studied me for a long moment. You intrigue me, Eliza Winters. You hide in corners and speak in whispers, yet when crisis comes, you stand taller than wolves twice your size. You think yourself weak, yet your hands heal wounds that would kill others. That's not an answer, isn't it? He ran his thumb across my knuckles, sending another jolt of sensation up my arm. There's something about you, something beyond designation or bloodline. I felt it since the first time I saw you. You never looked at me before yesterday. You're wrong. His voice dropped lower. I've watched you for months. The way you care for the elderly wolves that others have forgotten. The stories you tell the pups when their parents are away on patrol. The quiet strength you show when you think no one is looking. His words left me speechless. Had I been so focused on my own invisibility that I'd failed to notice the alpha's attention? There's another reason, he continued after a moment, his expression growing serious. The hunters who attacked us last night, they aren't ordinary humans. They're organized, methodical, with weapons specifically designed to harm our kind. I nodded. The Silver Compound. I've never seen anything like it. Exactly. And according to our scouts, they were searching for something, or someone. A chill that had nothing to do with the winter night crept over me. You think they were looking for a wolf? I think they were looking for someone with healing abilities beyond the ordinary. His eyes fixed on my grandmother's pendant. Someone from a bloodline known for such gifts. My hand flew to the silver crescent. My grandmother was just a healer, was she? Dominic's gaze was penetrating. Did she ever speak of her family? Her past before she joined our pack? I opened my mouth to answer, then closed it again. The truth was, she hadn't. My grandmother had appeared in our territory 30 years ago, a lone wolf seeking sanctuary. her extraordinary healing abilities earning her immediate acceptance. She'd raised my mother, and later me, passing down her knowledge but little of her history. These hunters, Dominic continued, they carry records, ancient texts describing a lineage of healers whose blood could do more than mend wounds. They believe this bloodline holds the key to something they desperately want. And you think that's my family? The idea was absurd. I'm nothing special, Dominic, just an Omega who learned her grandmother's remedies. An Omega who can identify poison signatures at a glance, who instinctively knew how to neutralize a silver compound our pack has never encountered before. His hand tightened around mine. I need to keep you close, Eliza, not just for your protection, but for what you might not even know you carry. The explanation made a cold, logical kind of sense, but it did nothing to ease the disappointment spreading through my chest. Of course he hadn't chosen me for myself. I was a strategic move, a potential asset to be protected. I tried to pull my hand away. He wouldn't release it. That's not the only reason, he said, as if reading my thoughts. But it's the one I can explain rationally. The rest? He shook his head, frustration evident in the set of his jaw. Before he could continue, a commotion near the bonfire drew our attention. 2 young wolves, Jacob and Liam, brothers known for their quick tempers, squared off against each other, growls rising above the music. "Excuse me," Dominic said, standing. "Duty calls." I watched him stride toward the confrontation, his mere approach causing both wolves to back down immediately. This was who he was, the alpha whose presence commanded respect, whose authority was absolute, and somehow, impossibly, he had chosen me. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? When my life had been turned upside down in the space of a heartbeat, I paced the small confines of my cabin, alternating between disbelief, terror, and a treacherous flicker of hope. According to tradition, Dominic's claim began a courtship period that would culminate at the spring equinox, when we would either formalize our mating bond or part ways. 3 months to determine whether his interest was genuine or merely the result of whatever mystery he believed surrounded my bloodline. 3 months during which I would be moved from my humble cabin to the Alpha's residence, where I would be expected to begin learning the responsibilities that came with being an Alpha's mate. 3 months under Sophia's contemptuous gaze and the scrutiny of the entire pack. Dawn found me sitting on my porch steps, watching the first rays of sunlight paint the snow-covered forest in shades of pink and gold. The peaceful scene belied the turmoil within me. "You look like you've seen a ghost," I startled at Diana's voice. The head healer approached from the path leading to the main pack houses, her expression somewhere between concerned and amused. "Or perhaps become one," she added, settling beside me on the step. "The entire pack is talking about last night." "I'm sure they are," I muttered, wrapping my arms around my knees. "You don't seem happy about being chosen by the most eligible wolf in 5 territories." I glanced at her. This woman who had been my mentor and closest thing to a friend for the past 3 years. "Would you be? When you know it can't possibly last?" Diana raised an eyebrow. "And why can't it? Look at me, Diana. I'm an Omega. The weakest designation. I have no exceptional skills beyond what you and my grandmother taught me. Nothing that would make me worthy of an Alpha." She tapped a finger against her chin. "Perhaps Dominic sees something you don't. He thinks there's something special about my bloodline, something to do with the hunters who attacked us." I touched my pendant. "He's protecting an asset, not choosing a mate." Diana was quiet for a long moment. "Your grandmother was my dearest friend," she finally said. "Did you know that?" I shook my head. "She came to us alone, pregnant with your mother, seeking sanctuary. The Alpha at the time, Dominic's father, granted it immediately, despite objections from some quarters." "Why?" "Because he recognized what she was, even if she never spoke of it." Diana's eyes held a faraway look. "There are bloodlines older than our pack structures, Eliza. Lineages that trace back to the first wolves, carrying gifts that have been diluted over generations but never lost." A shiver ran down my spine. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your designation as an Omega might have nothing to do with your true nature." She stood, brushing snow from her pants. "Dominic's father sensed it in your grandmother. Perhaps Dominic senses it in you." Before I could question her further, a young wolf, one of Sophia's personal guards, appeared at the edge of my small clearing. "The Alpha requests your presence," he said stiffly, clearly uncomfortable with his assignment. "I'm to escort you to his residence." Diana squeezed my shoulder. "Remember, Eliza, true strength isn't always what it seems." The same words my grandmother had spoken. What did they mean? What secrets had she carried to her grave? I had no time to ponder these questions as I was led through the main pack compound toward the largest structure, the Alpha's home. Wolves stopped their morning activities to watch my passage, expressions ranging from curious to hostile. I kept my head high, though inside I trembled. The Alpha's residence was a sprawling log structure nestled against the base of the mountain, its windows overlooking both the pack compound and the wilderness beyond. I'd never been inside before, had never had reason to be. My escort left me at the front entrance with a curt nod. Taking a deep breath, I knocked on the heavy wooden door. It swung open almost immediately, revealing not Dominic but Sophia. Her eyes, so similar to her brother's yet lacking their warmth, raked over me from head to toe. "Well," she said, her voice dripping with disdain, "at least you're punctual." She stepped aside, allowing me to enter a great room dominated by a stone fireplace and furnished with comfortable-looking leather chairs and sofas. The walls were lined with bookshelves and adorned with maps of our territory. "My brother will join us shortly," Sophia said, gesturing for me to sit. "In the meantime, I thought we should have a little chat." The way she said chat made it clear this would be more of an interrogation. "What are your intentions toward my brother?" she asked without preamble, remaining standing while I perched uneasily on the edge of a chair. I don't understand. It's a simple question. What do you hope to gain from this arrangement?" "Nothing," I said honestly. "It wasn't my idea." Sophia's laugh was cold. "Are you expecting me to believe you didn't somehow manipulate him? A convenient healing touch? Perhaps a strategically timed display of vulnerability?" Heat rushed to my cheeks. Our bloodline has led this pack for 7 generations," she continued as if I hadn't spoken. "We have maintained our strength through careful mating selections. And now my brother chooses an omega? It defies reason." I found my voice. "I agree." That seemed to surprise her. "If you're waiting for me to defend his choice, I can't," I said. "I don't understand it any more than you do." Sophia studied me, her hostility giving way to something more calculating. Then we find ourselves in an unusual position of agreement. Before she could continue, the door opened and Dominic entered, his presence immediately filling the room. He took in the scene with one sweeping glance, his sister standing over me, my uncomfortable posture, and his expression darkened. "Sophia," he said, his tone a clear warning. "Brother." She smiled, all teeth. "I was just getting to know your chosen one." "Was that what you were doing?" He moved to stand beside my chair, his hand coming to rest lightly on my shoulder. It looked remarkably like intimidation from where I stand. The siblings stared at each other, a silent battle of wills I could feel crackling in the air between them. Finally, Sophia inclined her head slightly. "I'll leave you to your courting," she said, the word dripping with sarcasm. "There's a council meeting to prepare for." She swept past us, pausing at the door. "Remember, brother, the pack always comes first." The door closed behind her with a decisive click. "I apologize for my sister," Dominic said once we were alone, his hand still resting on my shoulder. The weight of it was both reassuring and distracting. "Sophia believes she's protecting our family's legacy, isn't she?" I asked, finally looking up at him. "Everything she said makes sense. Your bloodline is powerful. Mine is not." He moved to sit in the chair opposite mine, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. This close, I could see the faint shadows beneath his eyes, evidence that his night had been as sleepless as mine. "Power isn't always visible on the surface, Eliza." His voice was low, almost hypnotic. "Some strengths reveal themselves slowly, like underground rivers that reshape the land without anyone seeing their flow." The poetic comparison surprised me. This man who commanded our pack with unquestioned authority, who could shift into one of the largest wolves I'd ever seen, who fought with terrifying precision. He spoke of hidden strengths with the reverence of someone who understood their value. "Why did you really choose me?" I asked, needing to hear the truth, whatever it might be. Is it just because you think the hunters are after my bloodline? Dominic was quiet for a long moment, his gaze steady on mine. That's part of it, he finally admitted. These hunters pose a greater threat than the pack realizes. If they're searching for someone with your family's abilities, I need to keep you safe. The confirmation stung, even though I'd expected it. But, he continued, that's not why I invoked the first claim. I could have protected you in other ways, assigned guards, moved you to a secure location. Then why? He ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture so uncharacteristically uncertain that it caught me off guard. Because from the moment I first truly noticed you, something inside me recognized something inside you. His voice roughened. When I touch you, I feel it, like a current passing between us. I've never experienced anything like it with anyone else. My breath caught. I knew exactly what he meant. That electric sensation, the heat that spread from even the smallest contact. That doesn't make sense, I whispered. No, he agreed with the ghost of a smile. It doesn't, but it's true nonetheless. He stood suddenly, extending his hand to me. Come. There's something I want to show you. Hesitantly, I placed my hand in his, that now familiar current running between us at the contact. He led me through the house, past a kitchen and dining area, down a hallway lined with old photographs of pack leaders past, and finally through a door that opened onto a private courtyard at the rear of the residence. Snow blanketed the ground, but a path had been cleared to a small stone building nestled against the mountain face. Smoke curled from its chimney, suggesting someone had anticipated our arrival. What is this place? I asked as we approached. My grandfather built it for his mate, Dominic explained, opening the heavy wooden door. It's been the Alpha's private sanctuary for generations. Warm air enveloped us as we stepped inside. The interior was a single room with a stone fireplace, comfortable furniture, and walls lined with books from floor to ceiling. A large desk stood near windows that overlooked the forest stretching toward distant mountains. It's beautiful, I said, taking in the peaceful atmosphere. It's yours, Dominic replied. For as long as our courtship lasts, and beyond if you choose to stay. I turned to him in surprise. Mine? He nodded, moving to stand near the fire, its light playing across his features. You'll need a place of your own within the residence. Somewhere you can work on your healing, continue your studies. Somewhere that's just yours. The thoughtfulness of the gesture made my throat tight with emotion. How long had it been since someone had considered my needs, my comfort? Thank you, I managed. Dominic watched me explore the room, his expression unreadable. There's another reason I brought you here, he said after a moment. My grandfather kept records of pack history going back centuries, including accounts of the hunters who now threaten us. He moved to the desk, opening a drawer to remove an ancient-looking leather-bound volume. This journal describes an encounter nearly 200 years ago. Hunters carrying silver weapons inscribed with symbols, seeking a wolf they called the Healer. My interest piqued. I joined him at the desk as he opened the journal to a page marked with a ribbon. The handwriting was faded but legible, the account written in first person by an alpha named William Blackcrest. The hunters speak of ancient texts that describe a bloodline of wolves with power over life and death. They believe the blood of these wolves can cure human disease, extend life, perhaps even confer immortality. Such delusions drive them to extremes of cruelty. They captured a young female from the Eastern Territories, believing her to be of this bloodline. By the time we rescued her, they had taken too much blood. She died in our camp, but not before warning that they would never stop searching. Cold dread settled in my stomach as I read the account. You think these are the same hunters? After all this time? Or their descendants, continuing the same mission? Dominic's expression was grim. The symbols described here match those on the weapons we recovered 2 nights ago. I traced my finger over a crude drawing in the journal margin. A circle with a crescent moon inside, nearly identical to my pendant. This doesn't prove anything about my bloodline, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My grandmother never spoke of such powers. Didn't she? Dominic's gaze was penetrating. You told me she taught you to recognize poison signatures, to neutralize silver compounds you'd never seen before. Are those ordinary skills, even for a healer? They weren't. I'd always known my grandmother's methods were unique. her knowledge deeper than other healers, but I'd assumed it was experience, not some mystical bloodline ability. "I need to show you something else," I said suddenly, reaching for the pendant at my neck. The silver crescent came away from the chain, revealing a small compartment hidden within its curve. Dominic watched intently as I opened it, removing a tightly folded piece of paper I'd discovered after my grandmother's death. I'd never shown it to anyone, had barely looked at it myself after finding the strange symbols incomprehensible. I unfolded it carefully on the desk. The paper contained rows of markings, similar to the journal drawing but more complex, forming what looked like a family tree. "I found this after she died," I explained. I couldn't make sense of it. Dominic's sharp intake of breath told me he recognized something I didn't. "These are lineage marks," he said, his finger hovering over the symbols without touching them. "Ancient wolf clans used them before written language, to track bloodlines with special gifts." My heart raced. "What does it say?" "I'm not certain of all of it, but this symbol here," he pointed to a marking repeated throughout the document, "represents healing. And this one," his finger moved to another symbol, "means life-giver." The implications were staggering. If Dominic was right, if the hunters were right, my family carried abilities beyond ordinary healing, abilities worth killing for. "What does this mean for me?" I whispered. "For us?" Dominic's eyes met mine, dark with an emotion I couldn't name. "It means you're even more important than I realized. To the pack, to me. Because of what I might be able to do?" "Because of who you are," he corrected. "These abilities, if they exist, are part of you, not separate from you." His hand covered mine on the desk, that now familiar current flowing between us. But this time, something new happened. A warmth spread from the point of contact, traveling up my arm and throughout my body. Where it passed, minor aches and the fatigue of my sleepless night faded away. Dominic's eyes widened. "Did you feel that?" I nodded, unable to speak. "Your touch," he said slowly. "It healed me. Not just the silver wound from the hunters, but older injuries. Pain I've carried so long I'd forgotten it wasn't natural." I pulled my hand away, frightened by what had happened. "I didn't do anything. I don't know how to do whatever that was. It happened instinctively." Excitement tinged his voice. "Your grandmother's abilities, passed down to you." The door opened before I could respond, a beta wolf appearing with an apologetic expression. "Alpha, forgive the interruption. The council is assembled and growing impatient." Dominic's expression shifted back to the impassive mask of leadership. "Tell them I'll be there shortly." The messenger nodded and withdrew, leaving us alone again. "I have to go," Dominic said, regret evident in his tone. "The attack has the council on edge. They'll need reassurance, guidance." "Of course." I stepped back, creating distance between us. My mind still reeled from all I'd learned, from what had happened when he touched me. He moved toward the door, then paused. "Will you join me for dinner tonight? There's still much to discuss." Despite my confusion, a part of me longed to be near him again, to explore this strange connection between us. "Yes." His smile, brief but genuine, warmed something inside me. "Until tonight, then." After he'd gone, I sank into one of the comfortable chairs near the fireplace, my legs suddenly too weak to support me. Everything I'd believed about myself, about my family, was being challenged. If my grandmother had been more than just a healer, if I carried abilities beyond the ordinary, why had she never told me? And why did Dominic Blackcrest, the most powerful wolf in our territory, feel this inexplicable connection to me? I spent the afternoon exploring my new sanctuary, finding herbs and medical texts my grandmother had mentioned but I'd never seen. Supplies far superior to those in my small cabin. The room was a healer's dream, as if someone had prepared it specifically for my arrival. As dusk approached, I found myself growing nervous about the promised dinner. What did one wear to dine with an alpha who had claimed you in front of the entire pack? My meager wardrobe offered few options beyond my practical daily clothes. A knock at the main residence door interrupted my fretting. I opened it to find Diana, arms laden with fabric. "I thought you might need these," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Your grandmother would want you to look your best tonight." She laid several dresses on the bed, simple but elegant designs in colors that would complement my fair coloring. How did you know? I asked, running my fingers over a dress the color of forest shadows. Diana's smile held secrets. I've known this day would come since you were born, Eliza. Your grandmother made me promise to watch over you until you found your place. Did she know? About the hunters? About what our bloodline might be? She knew many things. Diana helped me into the green dress, her practiced hands making quick work of the fastenings. But some truths must be discovered, not told. That's not very helpful, I muttered. She laughed, turning me to face a mirror. Some journeys cannot be rushed. Trust that your grandmother prepared you in ways you're only beginning to understand. The woman in the mirror looked like a stranger, confident, almost regal in the simple but flattering dress. My pale blonde hair fell in soft waves around my shoulders, and my grandmother's pendant gleamed at my throat. There, Diana said with satisfaction. Now you look like who you truly are. And who is that? Her eyes, wise with age and experience, met mine in the mirror. That, dear Eliza, is what you're about to discover. Dinner with Dominic was set in a private dining room I hadn't seen during our earlier tour. A table by windows overlooking the moonlit forest was set for two, candles casting a warm glow over fine china and crystal. He was already waiting when I arrived, rising from his chair as I entered. His eyes widened slightly at my appearance, traveling from my face down the length of the green dress and back up again. You look beautiful, he said simply. The compliment, delivered without flattery or exaggeration, touched something vulnerable inside me. Thank you. He held my chair, his hand brushing my shoulder as I sat. Even that brief contact sent awareness coursing through me. I hope you don't mind, he said, taking his own seat across from me. I asked the kitchen to prepare your favorite. Sure enough, servers brought out roasted venison with forest mushrooms and herb-roasted potatoes. A simple meal, but one I'd mentioned once in passing to Diana. The fact that he'd remembered or bothered to ask touched me deeply. It's perfect, I said, genuinely moved by the thoughtfulness. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before he spoke again. The council is concerned about the hunter threat, he said, his tone measured. They want to increase patrols, possibly send scouts to neighboring territories to warn other packs. That seems wise. He nodded, watching me over the rim of his wine glass. They're also concerned about my choice of mate. There it was, the reality I'd been trying to ignore all day. No matter what connection we felt, no matter what abilities I might or might not have, the pack would never easily accept an Omega as their alpha's mate. What did you tell them? I asked, setting down my fork. That my choice was made, that you bring strengths to our pack that we desperately need in these dangerous times. His gaze held mine, and that anyone who challenges my decision challenges me directly. The blunt declaration sent a shiver down my spine, part fear, part something deeper and more primal. This powerful man had publicly claimed me, had defended his choice to the pack's leadership. And Sophia? A shadow crossed his face. My sister will come around, eventually. Somehow I doubted that, but I appreciated the confidence in his voice, the certainty that things would work out despite the obstacles before us. There's something I need to ask you, I said, gathering my courage. This afternoon, when we touched and that healing happened, you said you felt a connection to me before that. When did it start? Dominic set down his glass, considering. 6 months ago. You were treating a young wolf who'd been injured during training. I was observing the session, evaluating which wolves would join Border Patrol. I remembered the day. A teenage wolf named Marcus had dislocated his shoulder during combat practice. I'd reset it while explaining the procedure to the younger healers. You never even looked at me, I said. I was watching everything, he corrected, including the way you handled his pain with compassion but not pity, the way you turned his injury into a teaching moment. Your strength in that quiet moment. It called to something in me. And you've been watching me since then? He nodded, no apology in his expression. At first I told myself it was curiosity about your healing methods. Later I realized it was more. The honest admission made my heart race. Before I could respond, a commotion erupted outside the dining room. Raised voices, Hurried footsteps. Dominic was on his feet instantly, moving to the door with the fluid grace of a predator. He opened it to find his beta, Marcus, breathing hard as if he'd been running. "Alpha," he gasped. "Hunters at the southern border. They've taken hostages." The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet as I processed Marcus's words. Hostages. Our pack members in the hands of those who saw us as creatures to be studied, harvested, destroyed. Dominic's demeanor changed instantly. The attentive dinner companion replaced by the alpha leader. How many hostages? Who? 3. The Lambert siblings. They were on perimeter patrol. Marcus's voice was tight, with barely controlled fury. The hunters left a message. They want to trade. For what? Dominic demanded, though I suspected we both knew the answer. Marcus's eyes flickered to me before returning to his alpha. They want the healer. A cold weight settled in my stomach. They wanted me. How many hunters? Dominic asked, his voice deceptively calm. At least a dozen, heavily armed with the silver weapons. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Alpha, they know about Eliza. They mentioned her by name. The implication was clear. Someone had given the hunters information about me, about my possible connection to the bloodline they sought. Someone from within the pack. Gather the senior warriors, Dominic ordered. No one else. Meet me in the strategy room in 5 minutes. Marcus nodded and rushed off, leaving us alone in the suddenly silent dining room. They'll kill those wolves if I don't go, I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. Dominic turned to me, his expression fierce. You're not going anywhere near those hunters. The Lamberts have children, I argued, little ones who need their parents. And you think those hunters will simply release them if you surrender? He moved closer, his intensity almost overwhelming. They'll take you, drain your blood searching for whatever power they believe it holds, and kill the hostages anyway. Deep down, I knew he was right. But the thought of pack members suffering because of me, because of a bloodline I hadn't even known about until yesterday, was unbearable. There has to be a way to save them without sacrificing yourself, Dominic said, his voice softening as he recognized my distress. Trust me to find it. Trust. Such a simple word, yet so difficult in practice. My entire life had taught me to rely only on myself, to expect disappointment from others. But standing before him now, seeing the determination in his eyes, I found myself wanting to believe. What do you need me to do? I asked. Relief flashed across his features. Stay here. Keep the doors locked. I'm assigning guards outside. I'm a healer, Dominic. I should be preparing for wounded. He considered this, then nodded. Diana will come to you. Prepare what you need, but do not leave this house. Promise me. I promise. He reached out, his hand cupping my cheek in a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. I will bring them home. Before I could respond, he was gone, striding down the hallway with the lethal grace of the predator he was. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Diana arrived with 2 apprentice healers, and we transformed the great room into a makeshift infirmary. I moved on autopilot, preparing poultices for silver wounds, setting out bandages, boiling herbs for pain relief. All the while, my mind raced with questions. How had the hunters known about me? Who had betrayed us? And most troublingly, what if Dominic was wrong? What if surrendering myself was the only way to save the hostages? Stop that, Diana said sharply, breaking into my thoughts. I can hear you considering martyrdom from across the room. I looked up, startled. I wasn't... You were. She approached, lowering her voice so the apprentices couldn't hear. Listen to me, Eliza. Your grandmother didn't spend her life protecting you so you could throw yourself to the wolves, or in this case, the hunters. Those people have families, Diana. Children. And you think your death would save them? Her eyes were hard with certainty. These hunters have been pursuing your bloodline for generations. They don't honor agreements. They don't show mercy. Then why haven't they attacked the compound directly? Why bother with hostages and trades? Diana hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Because they fear what you might be capable of if cornered. The texts they follow speak of defensive abilities as well as healing ones. I stared at her. What aren't you telling me? Before she could answer, commotion erupted outside. The door flew open, and warriors began carrying in wounded pack members. The scent of blood and silver filled the air. I pushed my questions aside, focusing on the immediate crisis. My hands moved with practiced efficiency, cleaning wounds, extracting silver fragments, applying healing compounds, as I worked on a young female warrior with a deep gash across her torso. I found myself wishing desperately for the strange healing power I'd experienced with Dominic earlier. But no matter how I concentrated, it remained elusive. Hours passed. The wounded stabilized, but still no sign of Dominic or the Lamberts. Dawn was breaking when the door finally opened again. Dominic entered, supporting Robert Lambert, while 2 other warriors carried Robert's unconscious sister, Elise. All were covered in blood and soot. "Silver poisoning," Dominic said without preamble, helping Robert to a cot. "They've been exposed for hours." I moved to Elise first, the more critically injured of the siblings. Her breathing was shallow, her skin gray where silver particles had entered her bloodstream. Conventional treatments might not be enough. "Everyone out," I said suddenly. Decision made. Diana looked at me sharply. "Eliza, I need to try something, please." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "You heard her. Everyone out except the Alpha." The room cleared quickly, leaving only Dominic, the injured siblings, and me. "What are you going to do?" Dominic asked, watching me intently. "I don't know if it will work," I admitted. "But I need to try what happened between us earlier." The healing touch. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You think you can draw out the silver? Maybe. If what you and Diana believe about my bloodline is true." I took a deep breath, centering myself. "I need to focus." I placed my hands on Elise's chest, directly over her heart. Closing my eyes, I tried to recall the sensation I'd experienced with Dominic, that flow of energy, the warmth spreading through contact. Nothing happened. "It's not working," I said, frustration and fear building inside me. "You're trying too hard," Dominic said softly, moving to stand behind me. "When it happened before, you weren't trying at all." He was right. The healing had occurred spontaneously, without conscious effort. I took another deep breath, letting go of my desperate need to succeed, simply opening myself to possibility. Dominic's hands came to rest on my shoulders, and immediately I felt that current between us, stronger than before. It flowed from him into me, through me, and into Elise. Her body arched slightly, a soft gasp escaping her lips. Before my eyes, the gray cast of her skin began to fade, color returning to her cheeks. The silver particles seemed to rise to the surface of her wounds, turning to a dull ash that could be wiped away. Amazed, I moved to Robert, repeating the process. With Dominic's hands still on my shoulders, the healing came more easily this time, flowing naturally through our connected touch. When it was done, both Lamberts rested peacefully, their breathing steady, their wounds beginning to close naturally. I slumped back against Dominic, suddenly exhausted. "You did it," he murmured, his arms coming around me to support my weight. "We did it," I corrected. "It only worked when you touched me." He guided me to a chair, concern etched across his features. "What does that mean?" "I don't know." I rubbed my temples, trying to ease the headache that had formed. My grandmother never mentioned anything like this. The door opened again, Diana returning with a steaming mug that smelled of strengthening herbs. She took in the scene, the peacefully sleeping Lamberts, my exhaustion, Dominic's protective stance beside me. "So it's true," she said quietly. "The connection amplifies the gift." "You knew this would happen?" Dominic asked. Diana handed me the mug. "I suspected. There are old stories about healers who could perform miracles, but only when paired with their true match." Her eyes moved between us meaningfully. A healer and a protector, 2 halves of a whole. The implication sent a shiver down my spine. This connection between Dominic and me wasn't random attraction or convenient strategy. It was something older, deeper, perhaps even fated. "The hunters," I said, suddenly remembering. "What happened with the hunters?" Dominic's expression darkened. 6 dead. The rest escaped. "And the traitor?" I asked. "The one who told them about me?" His jaw tightened. We have suspicions, but no proof yet. Sophia? The name escaped before I could stop it. No, he said firmly. Whatever her feelings about my choice, my sister would never betray the pack to hunters. I wasn't entirely convinced, but this wasn't the moment to press the issue. The healing had drained me more thoroughly than I'd realized, my eyelids growing heavy despite my efforts to stay alert. Dominic noticed immediately. You need rest. I should stay with them, I protested, gesturing to the Lamberts. Diana can watch over them, he countered. You've done enough for tonight. Before I could argue further, he'd lifted me into his arms, cradling me against his chest as if I weighed nothing. Too exhausted to protest, I let my head rest against his shoulder as he carried me through the house. What you did tonight, he said quietly as we moved down the hallway. It was extraordinary, Eliza. You saved lives that conventional healing couldn't have saved. It wasn't just me, I murmured sleepily. No, he agreed, his voice dropping to a rumble I could feel through his chest. It was us. Together. The word echoed in my mind as consciousness began to slip away. Together. After a lifetime of feeling apart, separate, less than, the concept was as terrifying as it was beautiful. Dominic laid me gently on a bed. His bed, I realized distantly, pulling a soft blanket over me. The last thing I registered before sleep claimed me was the press of his lips against my forehead, and his whispered words, "Rest now, little healer. I'll keep watch." I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the distant sounds of activity from the pack compound. For a moment, I was disoriented, the events of the previous night seeming more dream than reality. Then the memories flooded back, the hostage situation, the healing, Dominic carrying me to his room. His room. I sat up quickly, taking in my surroundings. The space was surprisingly simple for the Alpha's private quarters. A large bed with dark linens, a wooden dresser, bookshelves filled with worn volumes. No ornate decorations or displays of status, just practical comfort, and the lingering scent of pine and cedar that I'd come to associate with him. Dominic himself was nowhere to be seen, though a fresh change of clothes had been laid out at the foot of the bed. Simple leggings and a soft sweater that looked suspiciously like they'd been retrieved from my cabin. I changed quickly, feeling strangely vulnerable in this most private of spaces. My body ached with a deep fatigue I'd never experienced before, as if the healing had drawn not just from my energy, but from something deeper within. When I emerged from the bedroom, I found Diana waiting in the great room, a knowing smile playing at her lips. "Before you ask," she said, "the Lamberts are fully recovered. Not a trace of silver poisoning remains. They're back with their children." Relief washed over me. "And the other wounded?" "All stable. Those with the worst injuries responded remarkably well to the treatments you prepared." Her expression grew more serious. "The pack is talking, Eliza, about what you did. About what it means." I sank into a chair, suddenly tired again despite having just woken. "What does it mean?" "It means you can no longer hide who you truly are." Diana sat across from me. "The bloodline gifts have awakened, and they grow stronger in Dominic's presence, just as the old stories said they would." "These stories," I said, frustration creeping into my voice. "Why didn't my grandmother tell me?" "Why didn't you?" Diana sighed, looking suddenly older. "Your grandmother wanted to protect you. The hunters have pursued your family for generations. They killed your mother when you were just an infant." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "Lena, your mother, was running from them when she returned to us, already mortally wounded. Her last act was to place you in your grandmother's arms." Diana's eyes grew distant with painful memory. "Your grandmother vowed that day to hide your abilities, even from you, until you were ready to bear the burden they bring. And am I ready now?" The question came out bitter, because I don't feel ready. None of us is ever truly ready for our destiny, Eliza. We simply rise to meet it when it arrives. She reached across to squeeze my hand. "But you're not alone in this. You have Dominic." The mention of his name sent an involuntary flutter through my chest. "Where is he?" "Council meeting. The attack has raised questions that need answers." I stood, suddenly restless. "I should join him." If the meeting concerns me, it concerns the entire pack, Diana corrected gently. And yes, the Alpha requested your presence once you were awake. But Eliza... She paused, choosing her words carefully. The Council isn't like Dominic. Many still see only an Omega, not the healer who saved lives last night. Be prepared. I nodded, squaring my shoulders. I've dealt with their judgment my entire life, Diana. Today will be no different. But as I followed her through the compound toward the council chamber, I knew that wasn't entirely true. Everything had changed in the space of 3 days. My understanding of myself, my place in the pack, my relationship with our Alpha, all transformed beyond recognition. The council chamber was a circular room built into the side of the mountain, its walls lined with torches despite the daylight outside, creating an atmosphere both ancient and solemn. 12 seats arranged in a semicircle faced a single stone chair, the Alpha's place. 11 of those seats were already occupied when we entered, the counselors' conversations falling silent at our approach. Dominic rose from the stone chair, his face revealing nothing of his thoughts. Thank you for joining us, Healer Winters. The formality of his address stung slightly, but I understood its necessity. Here, he was Alpha first, personal feelings second. The council has questions about last night's events, he continued, gesturing to an empty space beside his chair. Not a seat of equal standing, but close enough to signify my importance to the proceedings. I took my place, conscious of the evaluating gazes fixed upon me. Sophia sat directly opposite, her expression cold and assessing. Perhaps, she said, voice cutting through the silence, you could explain to the council exactly what happened with the Lambert siblings. The challenge was clear. I glanced at Dominic, who gave an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. They were suffering from severe silver poisoning, I began, keeping my voice steady. Conventional treatments would have been insufficient. I used an alternative healing method. A method no one has witnessed in this pack for generations, one of the elder counselors remarked. A method associated with a very specific bloodline. Yes, I admitted, no point in denial now. It appears I carry abilities inherited from my grandmother and mother. Abilities that make you a target, Sophia interjected. Abilities that have brought dangerous hunters to our territory and put our pack members at risk. Her accusation hung in the air, unanswerable because it contained a kernel of truth. The hunters had come for me, or for what they believed I represented. The hunters would have come regardless, Dominic stated firmly. They've been pursuing this bloodline for centuries. The difference now is that we have the means to fight them effectively. Through what mechanism? Another counselor asked, leaning forward with interest. The report suggests the healing only worked when the Alpha was in contact with Healer Winters. I felt heat rise to my cheeks at the implications in his tone, but Dominic remained impassive. The old texts speak of complementary abilities, he explained. The healer's gift amplified by the protector's strength, a natural balance, not unlike the harmony between Alpha and Omega that sustains any healthy pack. His words sent whispers through the council. I realized he was cleverly reframing my Omega status, not as a weakness, but as a necessary counterpoint to his Alpha strength, a perspective that challenged centuries of pack hierarchy. And if these hunters return, Sophia asked, if they bring greater numbers, more advanced weapons, then we will be ready, Dominic replied. Our defenses are being reinforced. Patrols doubled, and we have an advantage they don't expect. The healer, Sophia said flatly. No, Dominic corrected. The healer and the Alpha, working as one. A combination they have no defense against. The confidence in his voice stirred something in my chest. Pride, perhaps, or the first tentative tendrils of belief in my own worth. There is another matter to discuss, an older female counselor said, after a moment of contemplative silence. The traitor. Someone provided information to the hunters. Someone from within our pack. Tension immediately thickened the air. Betrayal was the gravest crime in wolf society, punishable by exile or death. We have narrowed our suspects, Dominic acknowledged. The investigation continues. And if the traitor is someone in this very room? Sophia's gaze swept the gathered counselors before settling on me. I stiffened at the implication, but Dominic's response was immediate and crushing. Then they would be very foolish indeed, he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. To have drawn attention to themselves with such a question. Sophia paled slightly, but held her brother's gaze. The council meeting continued, discussing increased security measures and communication with neighboring packs. Throughout it all, I remained silent unless directly addressed, observing the political currents swirling around me. It was clear that while some counselors viewed me with suspicion, others saw potential value in my newly revealed abilities. By the time the meeting adjourned, the winter sun had begun its early descent toward the horizon. Dominic remained behind as the counselors filed out, many casting curious glances at us as they left. Only when the chamber was empty did his formal demeanor soften. "You did well," he said, moving closer. "They expected you to cower. You didn't." "I've had plenty of practice hiding fear," I replied, offering a small smile. "Though your sister certainly tried her best to provoke it. Sophia is—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Protective. Of me, of our bloodline, of the pack's traditions. She thinks I'm a threat to all three. She'll learn otherwise." The certainty in his voice was comforting. "How are you feeling? The healing took much from you." "Better. Still tired, but stronger." I looked up at him, suddenly needing to know. "Did you stay with me last night, after you brought me to your room?" A flicker of something, embarrassment perhaps, crossed his face. "For a while. You were restless in your sleep. It seemed to help when I was near." The admission, delivered with such straightforward honesty, touched me deeply. This powerful man had sat beside me through the night, not out of obligation or strategy, but because he thought his presence brought me comfort. "Thank you," I said simply. He nodded, then offered his hand. "Walk with me? There's something I want to show you." I placed my hand in his, that now familiar current passing between us at the contact. He led me from the council chamber, through passages carved into the mountainside that I'd never seen before, until we emerged onto a natural stone terrace overlooking the entire territory. The view was breathtaking, forests stretching toward distant mountains, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across fresh snow. Our pack's homes looked tiny from this height, smoke rising from chimneys in peaceful curls. "My father brought me here when I was young," Dominic said, standing close beside me. "He said an alpha must always remember what he protects, not just the people, but the land itself, our history, our future." "It's beautiful," I murmured, understanding why he'd wanted to share this place with me. "This is what the hunters threaten," he continued, "not just individual wolves, but our way of life, our right to exist peacefully in the world." I turned to face him, struck by the intensity in his expression. "We'll stop them. Yes." His hand came up to touch my cheek, his palm warm against my skin. "Together." The word held so much more meaning now than it had days ago. Together. Not just as alpha and pack member, not just as protector and healer, but as two halves of something ancient and powerful. "Dominic," I said softly, needing to ask the question that had been forming since I woke. "Is this real? What's happening between us? Or is it just the bloodline magic pushing us together?" His thumb traced my cheekbone, his eyes never leaving mine. "Does it matter? Whatever began it. Instinct, magic, fate. What's growing between us is real, I feel it." He was right. So do you. Whatever mysterious forces had drawn us together, the connection we shared had become something genuine, something that made me feel, for the first time in my life, that I belonged exactly where I was. "I'm still afraid," I admitted. "Of the hunters, of failing the pack, of not being what you need me to be." "Fear doesn't make you weak, Eliza. It makes you careful, thoughtful." His voice deepened. "And you are exactly what I need. What I've always needed without knowing it." As the last rays of sunlight gilded the snow-covered landscape around us, Dominic Blackcrest, alpha of our pack and the most formidable wolf I'd ever known, lowered his head and pressed his lips to mine. The contact sent a surge of that familiar energy coursing through me, but transformed now into something warmer, sweeter. Not just healing or protection, but connection in its purest form. When we finally parted, breathless and a little stunned, I knew with absolute certainty that whatever dangers lay ahead, hunters with their silver weapons, traitors within our midst, the weight of ancient bloodline gifts, we would face them as we stood now, together,